Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Adventures of Chael Sonnen. Doing this in post-commentary, and this episode is going to be all fights. Fight. So our first fight that we're going to have in this episode is against Urijah Faber. I recorded all of this content over about an hour and a half, and I've cut it down to about 30 minutes, cutting all that, conflabbing with all of the training and all of that, and it's literally just going to be fight after fight after fight. See how you guys like it. I still fight like an idiot, but I think I have some more close fights in this episode, so let's get it. Obviously, as you can see, I have mounted Urijah Faber, and I am attempting to pizza pan his face at the moment. I do tend to find that I end up in that position a lot, going for the ground and pound on the head. The way I found with the Chael that I use, obviously, he's also not bad at stand-up, so I've been doing quite a bit of stand-up, and I'm absolute pro at getting out of submissions. I can't finish submissions all that well, but I can certainly get out of them. But you guys will see some of the stuff that I have got in these fights, and you'll see, some advancement in Chael's career. Obviously, recording live commentary, I have found that to be cumbersome and the videos to be overly long, so I'm cutting it down to this sort of format. So I can legitimately, I'm just going to record the rest of Chael's career, like in the next day or so, and have it all ready for you guys to go up one episode a week of the Adventures of Chael Sonnen. If you guys want the Adventures of Chael Sonnen more often, you need to let me know. This is episode 3, obviously. Obviously, Chael's career will only last so long, because there's only so many fights you can have in a professional UFC fighter's career. But when I finish the Adventures of Chael Sonnen, I am all for you guys to pick whose career I'm gonna do next. If you want me to do a super heavyweight, a Lesnar, or a Bob Sapp, or even if you want me to create a character called Ted YouTube or something, and end his career pretty badly. But I have actually been doing I would prefer to do a career fighter, a roster fighter. Just because they're more rounded in goodness, and I mean Chael's a better fighter than the core that I've been practicing with. So obviously, guys, let me know what you think. But obviously, in this one, we fight quite a few fighters I've heard of: Urijah Faber, Wanderlei Silva's in this episode, Anderson Silva's in this episode. So yeah, let's see where we go with our career. Obviously, the fights are relatively lengthy in terms of they usually go to the second or third round. I've never gone the distance in one of these fights though. That's something I would like to do at some point, but I'm finding that I either lose or win in the first or second round. So I hope that some of these fights are entertaining to you guys. I am going to just sort of talk about some of the stuff, but I like some of the positions I'm getting myself in. I've upped some of Chael's moves, taught him stuff like the Superman punch, some decent kicks and stuff. But honestly, just right and left hands, seriously, and takedowns have been my bread and butter for this for these fights. So I think he's gone. Oh, he got me back down. So we'll back into the mount position, and he's out. He is knocked unconscious. We have won by knockout. So let's advance to the next fight now. We'll advance to the next fight shortly, and then we'll obviously look at that replay. Look at that knockout. Wow. Crap. So yeah, we knocked out Urijah Faber. and the official announcement. Yay! I won by knockout. And now here we are. Here's the second fight. It's Wanderlei Silva. Chael Sonnen versus Wanderlei Silva. Let's go. Yves Levine as the referee. Let's get down to business, guys. I was on an absolute run during the prep for this fight, and I mean I was doing all sorts of kicks, and well, yeah, Wanderlei was a bit more difficult than I was banking on, really. He seemed to always have some sort of a defense against my moves, and then he got me in the head with that knee, and yeah, after he got me in the head with that knee really early on, I really wasn't at my best. That getting rocked with that knee to the head really shocked me, and I couldn't really get back into my game face, so to speak. And this happened. I lost by stoppage. But you know, maybe I should have prepared more for this fight. Obviously, when he got me with that knee to the head, I never really got back into it. I was completely out of it from when he got me with that knee to the head. So we'll move on to our next fight. The next fight in this run, which should be here any second now. Wanderlei Silva knocked us out. Rousimar Palhares. Now this was one of my favourite fights that I've ever had, because this guy, I didn't know who the fuck he was. I honestly didn't know who he was. But this guy outpaced me like a boss. I had all the strength on him, but he kept doing these like really cool like submission grabs, and I mean like that. He just threw himself on the floor, and the next thing I know, he's got me in an ankle lock, and I was like, what the hell? Wow. You know, he was one of the most interesting fighters I ever had. And I mean, he got me the first time. I thought, shit, he's gonna absolutely get me. I mean, and then he did that submission switch where he switched to another angle. I was like, bloody hell, you know, this guy is like impossible to break out of his submissions. And I mean, this is where I had to work really, really hard with my submission defending, and I had to really concentrate on trying to break the submissions, because Rousimar Palhares absolutely well, he nearly took me about 5 or 6 times during the fight, but I mean, I always had him with the physicality, and I kept out physicaling him. In terms of stand-up, I had him like a second-rate bitch, but I mean, he kept getting me down in these submissions. I kept fighting the submissions as best I could, obviously. He's such a good submission artist, but I mean, my submission defense is pretty damn high. That is one of my favourite things to practice because it's easy to do. But you know, I learnt my lesson after this time that when you knock the guy on his arse and he's on his back with his legs in the air, and it's this guy, you don't fucking approach him to go for a dive, because he will get you in an ankle lock and he will nearly tap you. So I just started staying back and leaving him on the floor. Because I was a bit scared of these submissions, really, because, you know, all it takes is me to be a little off game, and I've tapped, and obviously, having lost the last fight to Wanderlei Silva, I needed to come back, and I needed to come back bloody well strong. I need to come back really, really strong. So, hopefully that's what I did here. He kept getting me in these submissions, and he was getting better and better at catching these submissions, but I kept finding ways to break them. I knew eventually he was going to go down, he was taking damage, and I wasn't. So, obviously we got to the end of a round, and I just kept going for him, kept making sure to keep hitting him, and to keep trying to hurt him, knowing that eventually I would win because of he was taking more damage than I was. But I had to assess it carefully, as the advice by my cornerman said. But I was confident if I keep hitting him, he's going down. So that's what I had to bear in mind during this. I had to bear in mind that I can take him down, and I eventually would. So I just, kept trying to hit him with whatever I could hit him with, and try not to let him get me into too many of those ground-based submission holds. Not over-exerting myself. Obviously, when I started to get a bit gassed, I'd back off. He went into a fair few of he got rocked at one point, and then the referee stopped the fight. Eventually I knew he was going to go down. I just had to sort of be patient and make sure that I took my time with it, and I knew he was going to go down. I just had to wait for it. And then obviously the next fight is Nate Marquardt. Moving straight into fight after fight after fight in this episode, because I did about 7 or 8 fights in this episode, leading up to the end, which you'll see shortly. This one again, because I don't know who any of these guys are, I don't really know what their fighting style is, so I literally just have to go hell for leather right at the start and see what I can do. I've got my fighting style, which is throwing punches when I'm close and kicks when I'm a bit further away, and eventually hope that it pays off. That's the fighting style that I've been using in this playthrough. But Nate Marquardt wasn't all that tough, wasn't all that a hard fight. I've had much harder fights. After that Rushimar Palhares fight, which was such an entertaining fight to even participate in, because of all of his ground-based submissions. He was such a monster. I mean, not very often do people take me down, but I'm usually pretty able to get them off and be pretty quickly. But I certainly had an absolute wealth of fun with these fights. That is one of my favourite things to do, is get them into the clinch and throw them over my head like that. That really does give me an advantage, because it really does hurt them. And then obviously if I can get into my ground and pound, because ground and pound is one of my best ways of finishing a fight. Just because I've got quite a bit of stamina with Chael, and well, there's a lot of blood in the ring at the moment, so obviously I'm doing something right. Everybody eventually goes down. That's the way I've treated my ground and pound style. Everybody eventually will go down. I just got to hit them enough times in the head. But everybody goes eventually. Whether it's fight being stopped by TKO or actually knocking them out from the ground and pound. But I come close there to tap in, but I eventually managed to pull myself free of his Kimura arm lock. Fight stopped, and Fight stopped for the round break. Going into the third, I think, at this point. I've never really gone the distance, I don't think, in a fight. Obviously, I'm posting this. I'm doing this one in this commentary like a week after I recorded this. This is just like extra footage that I recorded one day when I was playing the game. I wanted to play the game, so I just sort of slammed on the recorder and just got going. But the way I find it is, everybody goes eventually. If I rock someone on the floor, and I've found that my ground and pound hasn't been as successful in this fight, I will try for a submission, but that obviously didn't work that time. But I knew I was gonna take this guy down eventually. I mean, I used the cage to pull myself up, knowing that I can do many a thing when I'm up against the cage, because I've learned quite a few moves in that thing. So yeah, this is sort of like a great cuddling match here. Cuddling up against the cage, like love lost lovers. But I really wanted to get myself out of this back against the cage position with the knees. Got him with a couple of kicks. But I knew he was hurt after quite a bit of ground and pound in earlier rounds, so it's just a matter of trying to do as much damage as I could. Knowing that there's only so much left in the fight, and then I knocked him. I took him down. But yeah, apart from that, Wanderlei Silva, had a very, very, very relatively successful career. Quite a few fight wins, and in various different ways as well. A bit of an all-rounder in terms of the fighting, and so. Now what we're here for is this is the weigh-in for a title fight, because that fight with Marquardt was actually a number one contenders fight. So winning that has got me the number one contendership fight in a 5-round fight with Anderson Silva. So here we are at the weigh-in for the middleweight championship, the middleweight title fight at the next battle. Decided to leave the weigh-in in because, well, you only get weigh-ins for title fights, and that's why I put it in. But here we are with the pose down with Dana White in the background. You pick. I don't really know what this does, whether picking casual or fight, but I always go for fight. So here we are, heading into the fight. Anderson Silva, the Spider, versus Chael Sonnen for the middleweight championship. So obviously, we're a title contender now, right? And so you would see. But I try to skip as much as I can, just because I wanted to get to the fights as quick as I could. But obviously, I think this sort of format of the game is going to work. I mean, I can record for nearly 2 hours at a time and edit it down to 30 minutes, cutting out all the bits in the middle, all the training and stuff, because I know you guys are in this for the same thing I am, to watch me do some fights. So here we are for the middleweight championship. It's Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen. Let's do this. Let's take this one on. So obviously, this fight goes a bit longer than you'd expect. This one's nearly a 10-minute fight, but it's 5 rounds as opposed to what we've been doing before, which is 3 rounds. So it's a longer fight for the championship. But here's hoping we can make our way out of the octagon with the championship. I love the 3 dudes hanging on the outside of the octagon. I just really like that there's 3 like hangers on in like Anderson Silva t-shirts hanging out behind him. But he's lost 4, won 30. We haven't had as many fights, but we can do this, can't we? We've got Josh Rosenthal as the referee. Loads of suits. And Michael Buffer behind the ref. Michael Buffer holding his arm under the referee's armpit so that he can talk on the microphone. One of the card girls. Let's go! For the middleweight championship. Let's put Anderson Silva down. At least try to. Not so sure we'll have all that much success in this one. Anderson Silva is, I think, one of the best middleweights in this game, so let's at least try, eh? Try our usual tactics of trying to get him down so we can go for the ground and pound to injure the head, but he's got much better takedown defense than I was expecting, and he's turning it into things. He got him up against the cage, which he quickly turns around. I was really put out by this fight because I was like, well, wow, fuck. Anderson Silva's a much better fighter than I was expecting him to be. All of the really easy fights I've had, all of the relatively easy fights I've had before this, and then this one, he's like an absolute monster, you know. I was throwing my absolute best at him, and I wasn't really leaving much of a scratch. I was giving my best in this one, just sort of trying to throw my absolute best at him in terms of shots, and he was pretty much knocking me back at every single turn. Whilst he wasn't doing much to me, I think he was sort of waiting in the long game for me to tire. And then he got me in that triangle, in that submission that I barely escaped from. I barely escaped from that. Well, that's Go-Go plot, isn't it? The WWE known Hell's Gate. I better got out of that. I better got out of that one then. And then he pretty much caught fire and just kept coming at me, you know. I was desperately hoping that I could find something that I could do to him that would actually do some damage, but nothing seemed to be working. So I sort of wasn't really sure what to do. So I just sort of I just kept trying what I knew, and hopefully something would work. But there's only so much hope booking, as my friends at the MFX podcast like to say, that one can get away with before you've got to just submit to the fact that nothing bloody works. Legitimately, I thought at one point I was fighting a Terminator, because he was just taking my absolute best and not even looking at all hurt. You know, some of my best ground and pound, and he was just getting up from it, blocking me off. Some could say I probably went for a title fight too early, but the way I look at it is, I think this experience with Anderson Silva is going to be a positive one for the career, for my career for my career mode play, as I now know what Anderson Silva is about. So I now know when I come back for another fight with Anderson Silva, I've got to be fucking ready for him, because he's an absolute goer. And there's not a lot I can do about it. I've got to be ready for him. Because I clearly wasn't at this point. Whilst I was able to break his submissions, I still don't feel he was looking at all hurt, you know. He was pretty much in charge the whole way. Even though I was doing the bulk of the attacks, he wasn't even looking at all bothered by what I was doing. He kept grabbing me and getting me into positions that I probably don't want to be in. The best I could do was just hit him as hard as I could, as often as I could, and just see if hopefully something could happen. But the whole way through I was thinking, this guy doesn't take damage. This guy is like... This guy is almost like the middleweight version of Brock Lesnar, who just doesn't take damage, you know. I can't even do that well in terms of takedowns with him. This works with everybody else. Why doesn't it work with him? Is what I was thinking. Eventually, my takedown did succeed. He got me into a submission in the last second of that round, but obviously couldn't pull off the submission because the bell stopped him. The round break stopped him. But he was on top of me. Until he had control of this fight all the way through. Now I'm looking back at it. He knew that I'd punch myself out eventually. And he was just a matter of waiting and taking me down when the time was right. But we're going into the third round here. Again, I'm thinking I've got to get this guy down, and I've got to pound the living shit out of him, and quickly try and take this guy out, because, well, I was fully aware of the fact that I was pretty much punching myself out. I've never been in the entire career I've done with Chael, I have never been to the third round, so I really need to take control and try and take this guy out as quickly as possible. and get this fight over with, because I will run out of energy shortly. I desperately scrabbled and scrabbled trying to pull out of this, but I couldn't get out of the submission, and I tapped and was defeated in my first middleweight championship match by Anderson Silva. So guys, this is the last fight in this episode of The Adventures of Chael Sonnen. In the next episode, I'm going to try and reprieve myself and try and do something with Chael's career. Hopefully I get another title, I get myself into the title picture, but I don't think I was that. I really need to work really hard on my training in order to even have a shot at Anderson. So hopefully guys, in the next episode I will look like more of a contender. But thank you guys for watching this. Do remember to like and comment to support the series. Subscribe so that you can see all of this and more of my all of my other content that I put out on the channel. Uploads every single day. So thank you guys for watching. I can be followed on Twitter at TomWilliams1990. So thanks for supporting this series, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Adventures of Chael Sonnen, or in the next episode of whatever one of my series that you choose to watch. See you guys. Goodbye. A character called Ted YouTube or something, and end his career pretty badly. But I have actually been doing really. I would prefer to do a career fighter, a roster fighter, just because they're they're more rounded in goodness, and I mean Chael's a better fighter than the core that I've been practicing with. So obviously guys, let me know what you think, but obviously in this one we fight quite a few fighters I've heard of. Yushin Okami, Vanderlei Silva's in this episode, Anderson Silva's in this episode. So yeah, let's see where we go with our career. Obviously the fights are relatively lengthy in terms of they usually go to the second or third round. I've never gone the distance in one of these fights though. That's something I would like them and the videos to be overly long, so I'm cutting it down to this sort of format. So I can legitimately, I'm just gonna record the rest of Chael's career like in the next day or so, and have it all ready for you guys to go up one episode a week of The Adventures of Chael Sonnen. If you guys want The Adventures of Chael Sonnen more often, you need to let me know. This is episode 3, obviously. Obviously, Chael's career will only last so long, because there's only so many fights you can have in a professional UFC fighter's career. But when I finish The Adventures of Chael Sonnen, I am all for you guys to pick whose career I'm gonna do next. If you want me to do a super heavyweight, a Lesnar, or a Bob Sapp, or even if you want me to create. I do tend to find that I end up in that position a lot, going for the ground and pound on the head. The way I found with the Chael that I use, obviously, he's also not bad at stand-up, so I've been doing quite a bit of stand-up, and I'm absolute pro at getting out of submissions. I can't finish submissions all that well, but I can certainly get out of them. But you guys will see some of the stuff that I have got in these fights, and you'll see, some advancement in Chael's career. Obviously, recording live commentary, I have found that to be cumbersome. Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of The Adventures of Chael Sonnen. Doing this in post commentary, and this episode is going to be all fights. Fight. So our first fight that we're going to have in this episode is against Yushin Okami. I recorded all of this content over about an hour and a half, and I've cut it down to about 30 minutes, cutting all that, conflabbing with all of the training and all of that, and it's literally just going to be fight after fight after fight. See how you guys like it. I still fight like an idiot, but I think I have some more close fights in this episode, so Let's get on. Obviously, as you can see, I have mounted Yushin Okami, and I am attempting to pizza pan his face at the moment. To do at some point, but I'm finding that I either lose or win in the first or second round. So I hope that some of these fights are entertaining to you guys. I am going to just sort of talk about some of the stuff, but I like some of the positions I'm getting myself in. I've upped some of Chael's moves, taught him stuff like the Superman punch, some decent kicks and stuff. But honestly, just right and left hands, seriously, and takedowns have been my bread and butter for this for these fights. So I think he's gone. Oh, he got me back down. So we'll back into the mount position, and he's out.